Okay, we're going to talk a little about what's going on in Massachusetts as well as the Democratic Party as a whole. Ayanna Pressley won the primary for what district was that? It doesn't matter, but this was a Boston area district in Massachusetts. Let me see here. I can get the primary result for that. So, sorry about that. I usually like to have my links ready, but I guess I keep missing on that. In any case, the issue with Ayanna Pressley is that, yes, she won a pretty handy victory over her opponent, Michael, or whatever that guy's name. I think it's Michael Capuano. And it was 59,000 to 42,000. So that's almost, that's almost 100,000 votes. It's a little more than 100,000 votes total, 102,000. And that's a great way to represent it. And unlike a similar race that's being compared to with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley won a significant number of votes. This is a little bit more of an impressive win, in my opinion. And I think, think what you want about her, but I think you do need to give her a hand because she fought against a real seasoned opponent, an opponent who took her seriously, unlike Joe Crowley, who was basically a dumbass and didn't even try to challenge or didn't take the challenge of Ocasio-Cortez seriously at all. And that's why, in a few months he's going to be basically cleaning up coaster stains on bar tops somewhere in Queens. That's basically what's going to happen to him. So what does this mean for the Democratic Party? Well, she's getting the New Start treatment the same way that after Ocasio-Cortez won her race for the primary race, which effectively does mean that she's going to be the new rep for New York. The same way, Ayanna Pressley is effectively elected the new representative for Massachusetts for District 7 because there is no Republican opponent registered. So this is basically an election in a district that is effectively a Democratic. It's not just a stronghold. It's basically a sanctuary. There is no opposition party to speak of. There is no difference of opinion. And that's the way it is in a number of, there are Republican districts like that all the way out in rural areas of Indiana and Idaho and even I think here in Ohio. Let me see there. We might have a district like that in Ohio if I can scroll up. I see we have most of them. You don't have an issue like that. No, we have, so I guess in every district in Ohio, you at least have a candidate for two parties, which I think is still not enough. But there are other parts of the country that are so rural, and the Democrats basically have nobody there to represent them. That, it's just a Republican running unopposed. I think in South Dakota, there was a Senator, John Thune, a Republican that ran unopposed and won 100% of the vote. I think that was in 2010. So people have to remember that some of these places where some of these primaries are happening and people are just being voted out in the primary. Well, that person effectively becomes elected. That happened last month in Michigan with the election of what's her name, Rashida Tlaib. Or Talib, however you pronounce her name. In any case, here's the gushing review. It says Pressley takes down incumbent Dem Capuano in Massachusetts primary. A wave of young female and non-white candidates is reshaping the Democratic Party in the age of Trump. So I think the issue here is, look, I don't know much about this person, but when you make it an issue of them not being a white person and being female, then you're sending a message as to what is really desirable. It has very little to do, at least on Politico. This might not even be Ayanna Pressley's fault, because although, you know, from what I'm hearing, she did use her identity pretty strongly. But I mean, let's listen to this video. Let's see how they do it. I guess we're gonna have to listen to some sort of Kraft or Walmart commercial first. Sorry about that.
Our democracy, our party is at a crossroads, and we get to decide. Does this go down as the darkest, most draconian time in our lives, or do we together usher in the most inclusive, progressive, change-making movement in history?
Ayanna Pressley could be the new face of an old-school Democratic district. She's running in Massachusetts' 7th Congressional District in a primary against 10-term Representative Mike Capuano. Pressley's pitch:
I've been a Democrat proudly since I was in utero. I hope we usher in a blue wave and we are in the Democratic majority. But you have to ask yourself, and ask my opponent, when we were in the majority, what did you do with it? What did you do with that seniority? How did you leverage your power and your influence? Now, if we're not in the majority and we remain in the minority, what should we do? Vote no like a robot in the resistance and then go home? I'm not going to abdicate my responsibility to lead, whether we're in the minority or the majority.
Because they're both young minority women, she's been compared to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But Pressley's no political novice.
If politics is like dog years, you know, I'm probably 80 right now, even though, you know, I'm only 44. I think when I started working for Congressman Kennedy, I was 22, and then ultimately went on to work for United States Senator John Kerry, both in Washington, D.C., and also here in district.
Still, she has some critics. And now, she's in the primary race of her life.
There have been some lonely moments, but what keeps me going is the work. You know, I think this work and this fight is necessary.
Okay, so I think that was well put together by Politico. Even, I mean, there's plenty of times I've criticized Politico, and I've even found them to be, you know, using fake sources. And we're not going to talk about that story today. Let's focus just on this one. Look, this was a person. You know, they compare her to Ocasio-Cortez. There is no comparison. You can see from her rhetorical style, she is much more intelligent and well put together, well prepared than Ocasio-Cortez. She behaves much more professionally than Ocasio-Cortez. And she will end up being a very, I believe she will end up being a very savvy politician in Washington. But that's exactly what she will be. She will be a politician, and this is another area where she's probably a little different from Ocasio-Cortez, although she could change as well. The issue that we're talking about is that Boston is a machine city. You're not talking about a city where there's actually, you know, a grassroots movement that conveys people that have never had any opportunities towards the top. She was a Boston City Councilwoman. She is very, very politically connected, as was alluded to in the video. Of course, there was her association with Senator John Kerry, and when he was running for president, and also the Kennedy family. Probably, I think it's what's the guy's name? Bobby Kennedy Jr. I think that's the one she was associated with. So essentially, we're not talking about somebody who is, you know, coming from, you know, the grassroots, really. If you were associated with all of these establishment, not just establishment, like the actual aristocracy of the establishment of the Democratic Party, this is not necessarily a change of management for the party. She might have more progressive views than Mike Capuano, but notice she was taking him to task for the failure of the failure of the Democrats before they lost power. Well, look, this guy's been in Congress since 1999. I think she has a good point. But where was she, having been so influential under the Kennedys? You know, if she had been, you know, of course, Joe Kennedy the second. Yeah, this is the guy who she was working with for a while. Well, so you were part of that group. Don't you deserve a little bit of responsibility as well, Ayanna Pressley? I mean, it's good that she's at least calling out the establishment. But if she is part of the establishment, then it is empty rhetoric. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what could be the outlook for the progressives in the Democratic Party. Should they, you know, of course, should they win the House in November, or if they don't win the House? So it could happen a couple different ways, but they're not that dissimilar. Let's say the Democrats end up winning the House, okay? Which is, you know, in my opinion, that would be a bad thing, but we're not talking about what we would like to happen. We're talking about what could happen if a certain scenario plays out. Therefore, there's already a movement amongst a significant portion of Democratic nominees that won their primaries not to support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. And if Pelosi ends up having to withdraw her name from that race, then you're going to see a real dogfight over who's going to be the next Speaker. You're going to have an establishment candidate, and you're probably going to have some sort of progressive candidate. And that will be the next point of friction within the Democratic Party. And supposing that the progressive candidate does not win, because you still have a lot of states where and seats, more specifically, it is more specifically seats in Congress that are run by the Democrats that are not progressives. Supposing that happens, you're going to have for the next 2 years these progressives. Well, and even if a progressive is given the speaker's gavel, they're going to be trying to pass a lot of bills that are part of the more progressive basic agenda, such as Medicaid for all, such as abolishing private prisons, and they're going to make it through the House, and then they're going to be vetoed. I mean, they're probably not going to be taken up by the Senate, but Donald Trump is going to veto a number of their policies, and they could be more at odds with Donald Trump than of course the current Democrats are in Congress, as they are today. The other thing is they could end up trying to impeach Trump, and that could end up backfiring on them in 2020, and they could lose the House back to the Republicans. Now, any of those things can. I mean, there could be that the impeachment process hurts Trump, but I personally don't see it that way. If you try to impeach a president and it fails, it usually ends up showing that he's stronger than the people trying to get rid of him. That's what happened with Bill Clinton. So the other possibility is that the Democrats don't gain the House in November. And if they don't gain the House, what will happen is basically a bloodbath within the party, and the progressives will be basically fighting in order to take over the House delegation, the Democratic House delegation from within. They're going to try to, of course, they're going to try to oust Pelosi, but at this point, I don't think she'll be able to justify staying another 2 years, because people are going to get tired of her saying, well, I raise a lot of money for the candidates. That's very cool, but you never end up winning the House, and your job is to try to advance the Democratic agenda in the House if you're Nancy Pelosi. It's pretty simple. So she'll be moved aside, and in the event that happens, again, you could have a very progressive candidate on the one hand, and then you could have an establishment candidate, and then you could have one of these like more Rust Belt Democrats like Tim Ryan over here from Youngstown, and there's a couple people from from Tennessee and Indiana like that. Those people could try to be the compromise person. So if for example you have Tim Ryan become the Democratic minority leader, or let's say if, I mean, hypothetically, it could be the House Speaker. I don't see that happening if they win the House. If they win the House, I see the House Speaker being either a full-on establishment Democrat in the Pelosi mold or some sort of lunatic, hard left, crazy person. You know, somebody like Barney Frank used to be. That would be the new Speaker of the House. So, yeah, that's basically what I think is going to happen. And if the Democrats, again, so if the Democrats lose the House, and you have these people in there dealing with a non-sympathetic minority leader, let's say it's Tim Ryan, or let's say it's Steny Hoyer, who's a really establishment type, you will see infighting within the Democrats that will be it will be entertaining for me, but will be very traumatic for the party itself, because you're going to see people like Ocasio-Cortez, or you're going to see people like, I don't think Ayanna Pressley is going to do it, but maybe this Rashida Tlaib, maybe a number of other people within the new crop, the Ilhan Omar woman from Minnesota. You see that they're saying, oh, it's a good thing that you're going to have minorities that are minority women and whatever, non-white women. That's all well and good if they can promote an agenda. If, however, they get into a confrontation with other members of the establishment, then it's actually going to create a bigger fissure between those two factions, which might be inevitable anyway. So I actually see, if the Democrats win the House, there could be a nightmare scenario, and I do see a nightmare scenario for them either way, because there is no coherency to the party. If they win the House, they will probably end up making some sort of garish spectacle of it all. And if they lose the House, then they're going to be eating each other alive anyway out of frustration and blaming each other, scapegoating each other. So that's about it. Please like the video, subscribe to the video, watch my channel. You know, I do videos probably 4 or 5 times a week, a little more often on the weekend. My email is chefleopardyt@gmail.com if you have any ideas, or if you want to be on the notifications list. A lot of people are not getting my notifications. Also, please comment when the video uploads, and I'll see you guys later.